Hello, hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is How. Every day, daily, I bring you a different way to shape your world. We call them people engagement tools, performance enhancement tools, possibility exploration tools. And today's is one which allows you to scale without losing quality or scope, to really move forward and make your organization or your team or your world transform. It's called FraktalRoll-in. Let's jump onto Cube and have a look. Welcome to Cube, where, as you know, the sun is always shining. This is one of my favorite cubicles. It's a teaching cubicle. We call it the yellow cubicle. It's great for 25 people. It's got a massive screen at the front. It's just a wonderful space. Big whiteboards we're breaking out on. Everybody gets their own little slate so they can work out here. It's a great place to be. Make sure you book and you come and get a subscription to Cube. So let's have a look at this FraktalRoll-in. So what's it about? It's a really simple idea. It came from a bad experience, or a number of bad experiences I watched happen as a young tutor. It also came from my noticing that whenever an organization tried to scale, it would talk about rolling out, and they would often roll out technology capabilities, and then people would not buy in, and it would all fail. And this happened over and over and over again. And also, it came from this very simple idea which I had, which is about the fact that we really had to focus on making sure that we made visible all the invisible things, because often when you're scaling something up, people lose track. So let's have a look at this. This is a typical rollout plan. That's what people talk about. You would have either done this or been on the receiving end of one of these plans. And they try and work out what they need to do to roll it all out. Well, let's take a slightly different view of it. So when I had my bad experience, it was very simple. It was when I was a young tutor, and we used to do this thing called total quality management. It was the AI of its time. And what basically happened was people decided that customers won't love us unless we can produce really brilliant products, okay? So the idea was we'd do quality throughout the organization so everything worked. The analogy at the time was really that if you went to try and buy a product, you really didn't want to be surprised by it. So at the place I worked, Ashridge, we'd get all the senior executives, and they'd come to us for about, I don't know, a week, 2 or 3 days, and we'd really thrash out, what is total quality management? What does it mean for your organization? How should you lead it? All the important things. And they'd come and they'd pay us a lot of money, and they'd take, I don't know, 3 days, 5 days, they'd really understand it. And then we come to the next level, and they go, well, the senior people understand what's going on. So maybe with the next level, we could just give them like an overview. So they would get like, let's say 2 days, understanding how their department should work, how they should integrate, how they should look for errors, and so on and so forth. And then we'd come to the general mass of the organization, and they'd go, well, there's so many of them. Actually, we can't afford to give them even a day. So let's have them for 1 hour and just sort of sheep dip them, bring them in, tell them the words, they bleat, nah, then you go next, bring them in the next squad, blah, in big groups. So this was my experience of what a rollout looked like. And it was always a disaster because people wouldn't understand, they wouldn't buy it, as you can imagine. At the same time, I was looking at how structures work, and I'd been studying complexity theory, and especially fractals, Mandelbrot sets, and so on, which self-replicate. And this is a picture of a self-replicating tree. You know how the shape of a tree is very similar to the shape of its leaves, and so on and so forth, because the same pattern repeats. And so I suddenly started thinking, I wonder whether we've got this the wrong way around. I wonder whether rather than to roll something out, whether we should actually roll it in, whether we should make sure the same idea rolls into the organization. And that's where FraktalRoll-in comes in. And it was in my book, The Complete Leader. And it's really a number of steps which allow you to scale with ownership and empowerment. So let's jump in and have a look. So the first place to look is what we would call the stealth group. But to understand the stealth group, let's zoom in a little bit on this. We always assume that the leader leads everybody, but that's not necessary. You can actually lead a few people, Fractal, and then if they actually copy you well enough, they can lead a few more people, and so on and so forth. So if you can actually get it right, you can use a sort of domino effect to drive the culture, the behavior, the understanding, the actions throughout the organization, from the leader to the followers, to right the way through to the laggards. And that was the idea which I had, which I thought was important. And then around the same time, there was a famous TED talk called Dancing Guy, where one guy gets up to dance. Have a look at it, it's hilarious. And he's dancing and he's really funny. And then everyone else is watching him. It's an outdoor festival. And then someone else gets up and starts doing the same dance. And everyone's watching them. And then he has to tell the guy who's copying him how to do it. And then other people come and join and do the funny dance. And then eventually about 1,000 people join in. And it's a really good example of this domino effect. And so the question is, how do you create the domino effect? And the way you create the domino effect is very straightforward. What you do is you start off with what I'll call a stealth group. A stealth group is so that you can learn what's going on. You can make sure you've understood what you're trying to roll out. There's a selection criteria. Look for forward-looking people. Make it small enough to manage. Have maybe one person who's not quite in with it, etc. Really small group. And with the stealth group, what you're trying to do there is you're trying to make available all the key concepts and testing them. Once you have that, now you've got your next group who are going to be the champions. The champions will do two things. They'll role model what's going on, but as you scale out with your fractals, if there's a leaf which is a bit square instead of being round, they help it fix. So they should understand enough to be able to support and grow as this idea grows through the organization. Change champions are really important. They really make sure that everything works well. So there you select in terms of people who are respected and are good communicators. They should be promoters. There must be people at nodes. Everyone comes to them. And you make available all the tools they need. And you sort of do the T and TTT, train the trainer, so they actually have all the skills to be able to do it. So at this stage, even though your organization is 10,000 people, you've only got a handful of people involved. And now we start to roll in. So the way we roll in is basically we decide on the fractal size. I like 5s. Because 5 is a small group, you can usually get them together. There isn't usually a diary headache and so on and so forth. It's enough people to work. And then you basically run through your fractals. And this is the way we think about fractals in terms of pentacles. So we've got pentagons and we've just lined them up. But the first fractal basically then works its way through let's get clear communicators. And then what we'll do with them is we'll make sure they're doing things or they're doing activities. They're supporting the change champions. And we get to the first fractal. So we go from, say, 5 to each person influencing 5 people. So we're now up to 25. Then we roll to the next fractal. So now that we're up to 25 times 5. So we're up to, what's 25 times 5? 125. Then we're up to 675. And then we're up to, and so you really just need to calculate how many iterations you need to get right the way across your organization. And even for a large organization, you're looking at 10, maybe 12 iterations, and you start to reach everybody. And now you've reached everybody, but not by rolling out, but by rolling in. They've absorbed it, they own it, they understand it. The champions have made sure it's being put into practice. And now you have your new organization. And if you know pets like the organoweb or Eskimo, you can then work on your new culture and grow it and aligns resources and make sure the story is told over and over again and things are anchored. So that's fractal roll-in. If you really need to change a lot of people and you want them to buy in and you want scale and ownership, that's how you do it. I'm quite amused at the rollouts of all the modern technologies because they're still using the old methods for trying to scale in a world which has changed and needs more engagement and empowerment. I've been Eddie Obeng. There's always a quick guide. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, then you won't miss anything. I'll see you again.